They come in singles, pairs, and groups in every vehicle imaginable. Domestic, import, old, new, fast, and real fast. You find them in every city in America at randomly chosen places, convenience stores, gas station parking lots, and public streets. And the numbers quickly add up to the hundreds. America's 50s tradition of rebel racers is back, and they're changing lives and taking lives at an alarming rate. This program is designed to address issues and challenges facing law enforcement when it comes to street racing and sideshow activities throughout the state of California. The need for speed and increasing obsession in North America. We'll also address strategies in preventing, combating, and stopping street racing and sideshow activities, and offer you information on tools to aid you in investigative tactics, successful prosecution, and other valuable resources.
They'll just get two cars side by side, and either they'll just yell through the window, I want to start it, or they'll actually have someone that will flag it and start it off, and they'll race. That's really what a race is, street race.
The people that are out there, your average 16, 17 to 25-year-olds, most of them aren't criminals. They're just out looking for something to do on a Friday or Saturday night, but unfortunately they pick something that's illegal. And a lot of times it gets out of control, and we don't want another fatality in our city. We don't want all these accidents, and we don't want all the problems that go along with the groups.
You know, it's always been a popular hobby, but it's getting worse and more dangerous for us. Technology's just getting better, and now these cars are, 200, 300 horsepower, and they're cheap. You can do that to a relatively inexpensive car. So the cars are going faster, and it's just more dangerous.
We've had gang shootings, we've had homicides, we've had assaults on innocent people who are just trying to get through and the road's blocked by all these people. So there are a lot of things that come into play when we're dealing with street racers.
It is a huge undertaking, but if as a result of these efforts you save just one life, what is the value of that life that you've saved?
Street racing started in Southern California. Street racing probably started with the second car that left the assembly line. It became predominant in the 1950s. It ended up changing some of the demographics and such until the 1970s, and became very popular out here with the domestic vehicles. It ended up subsiding for the next 20 years, and in the 1990s it became increasingly popular with the import vehicles. And that led to the stage in which we are today. It continued to increase in size and popularity. What we have found from the demographics is that they are reflective of the community in which you're doing the enforcement. They, all the way down to the percentage, they reflect it. When it came to across the board, their educational background, most of them are in college. The age group is between 18 and 24 years of age. Most of them have got some sort of an internet background or computer-based background. Their communication base is astronomical. I'd like to be able to hire some of them on my squad.
99% of the people out there, they're just enthusiasts, motorsport enthusiasts. They have a car. It's like me. It was like you get your first piece of modification to cars, it's great, and you get addicted to modifying your car.
Oftentimes there's modifications that are done on a vehicle just from the outside of the vehicle that may not be illegal, but you can obviously see that it's a racer type vehicle. They've done certain things to their braking system. They've done certain things to their lowering the vehicle, higher performance tires, things that may not be illegal in the vehicle code, but obviously indicate they've invested money in this, and they don't invest the money in this to go to and from work. They do it to race, either legally or illegally. So one of the things we can educate people on is just how to look at a vehicle even before you stop it.
A real good indication is if they've got a racing seat and racing harnesses and they've taken all the other seats out of the vehicle to lighten the car, well, they're going to make other modifications that are going to make that car go faster.
And really, it's, finding those street racers on the street and then doing some enforcement before the race instead of waiting until after the race.
I've been a motor officer now for the last 15 years. I found that if you make a pedestrian out of a participant, they don't want to play anymore. So the best you could use, the most tools that you could use out of the vehicle code to eliminate the problem would help you later on in the evening or later on in a future date. They don't want their cars towed, they don't want the tickets, they don't want the fines.
Yeah, they'll pull you over, you'll get the tickets, obviously the very visible tickets, but if he doesn't know what he's looking for and he doesn't see it, you're going to get away with it.
There are certain modifications that a beat cop can look for and that are citable, and they're indications that an individual or a car might be involved in illegal street racing. Some of those things are graphics on the windows of the vehicle. Of course, if those graphics block the front view or rear view of that car, that's a citable offense. And the graphics would include those things that high performance parts, racing teams, that's something you can look for. Also, lowered vehicles. If any part of that vehicle is lower than the lower rim of the tire, it's a violation and it can be cited. Also, illegal lighting. Anything on a vehicle that's not stock lighting is probably citable. The flashing lights around the license plate, the flashing lights on the running boards, on the windshield wipers, and they've even got lights they put on the tires. Those things are illegal and you can be cited for. When you stop a car and you see the legal modifications, spoilers, carbon fiber, the stickers, the graphics, the pedals, it's a good indication that there are other modifications that are performance enhancing modifications under the hood. So if you're comfortable with that, if you have the education, if you have the knowledge, it certainly is PC for you to ask them to pop the hood to take a look underneath. If you're not familiar with those illegal modifications that are power enhancing that are under the hood, call an area partner or your sergeant or somebody on your department or your area that knows what to look for.
One needs the proper training. He needs to have the proper guidance from qualified instructors before you need to even attempt that type of enforcement, because it's something that we don't want to lose. We want to be able to, you want to be able to do it right. When you write a ticket, you're putting your name on it, you're putting your word on it, and it's your bond, it's your word, and you can't lose that, no matter what. If you have it in court, you write bad tickets, you're going to get a bad reputation. You have to keep your reputation solid gold when it comes to writing a ticket, and writing a good ticket, and writing a ticket that you can testify to as an expert or as a qualified individual.
Experts in the field of street racing are really concerned about people making car stops that don't have the knowledge and writing bad tickets, because if we write enough bad tickets for certain sections, eventually those sections are going to be taken away from us, and this is something that we don't want to have happen. So it's important that you know the sections, that you're familiar with what parts are legal, what parts are not legal, and make good decisions about writing citations, because we don't want to lose those tools.
I had a 1996 3000 GT VR4. It's you could probably consider it a rare car at the time because not many people could afford it. So I mean, it was a pretty expensive car. It was just fast. It was a fast car stock. So once I started to modify it, it would become pretty quick.
Performance-enhancing parts like turbochargers, racing wheels, modified exhaust systems, and nitrous oxide kits are being used to boost power levels and speeds well above 100 miles an hour. You combine that with today's younger, inexperienced drivers, and you get a lethal mix for tragedy.
Intersections along MacArthur and Foothill Boulevards.
Police say that a Plymouth Barracuda was racing another car on Imperial Avenue at more than 100 miles an hour when the Barracuda struck a geostorm that was being driven 2 people in the GEO, including the driver, 19-year-old Shanna Jump, and a passenger, 19-year-old Brian Hansen, were both killed. A third person who was also in Jump's car was critically injured. That person has not yet been identified.
Yeah, media's got the community in an uproar. I hear the city council's all revved up, too. What were the chief's words?
We want the problem taken care of.
Along with that and a million other things.
Speedy, just show me something good. Show me something sexy. I don't want to talk about the 3.
How to shift like a true player. I remember when I was a kid, man, afraid to get behind the wheel of one of them fast cars with 300 horsepower. That's how I do.
Show me something good, babe.
Show you something good? How about this?
Do it again, do it again.
They've got high-performance intake manifolds, high-performance exhaust.
Is that right?
Racing shifters.
What does that do? Make it
It just makes it a lot. It turns a regular car into a street racing car.
Really?
All right. So me and my boy Jeff were cruising it, right?
Okay.
And we're like, yo, what's up? Pull up to a stoplight.
Okay.
And there's this cat with like a Bilstein sticker, so he thought he was like a true player. So I was like, what's up with some racing?
Yeah.
Street racing that much of a problem?
Possibly, you know, all these incidences lately.
What's up with that camera, man? You're looking like Steven Spielberg out this motherfucker.
I'm trying to be cute.
I can show you the Steven Spielberg. Fucking E.T. out this bitch. Whoa. Don't fucking do that, man.
Dude, what the?
Holy shit.
You almost hit that car.
Serious?
No, that was a cop car. He's following you, dude.
God damn. Thing looks like it's pretty fast.
Yeah, look at this muffler, man. You can hear that.
You gotta chill on that shit. Look straight, man. You're gonna look up. Look. God damn. All right, hold up. If he pulls up, let me do the talking.
Over.
Turn off the goddamn camera, man.
Robert Charles 13 Adam traffic. Man in Lamson. California plate 3 X-ray Henry Mary 543.
I'll do the talking. You just keep the goddamn camera off, man, and just be polite. Don't open your goddamn mouth, all right?
You know, I'm not the one that fucked up here.
Shut up, man. Shut the fuck up, all right?
Is there a problem, officer? Hello, I'm Officer Esparza at the River City Police Department. Can I see your license, registration, and proof of insurance, please?
I left my license at home.
So you do have a license?
Yes, sir.
You just don't have it with you?
No.
How about your registration and proof of insurance?
Is that going too fast, officer?
I'll tell you why right now.
All right, here you go.
Why don't you come on out of the car for me? I'm gonna close your door.
That's fine.
Come on over. What's your name, buddy?
Glenn Patton.
Say again?
Glenn Patton.
Glenn Patton. Mr. Patton, do you have anything on you I need to know about? Any weapons or anything sharp? Nothing? No. So you don't mind if I check you out, right? Pat you down?
Yeah, that's
Just
cool.
for my sake. All right, go ahead and turn around and face that way. Interlock your fingers behind your head. Spread your feet, point your toes outwards. Spread your feet. You're a big boy. Nothing on you, right, buddy?
Nah.
No. So, where are you coming from?
Encino?
Encino?
Yes, sir. Just taking a ride.
All right.
But did I go too fast or
I'll tell
something?
you why right now. Go ahead and have a seat. Go kick your feet out, cross your ankles, hands on your knees so I can see your hands. Being that you don't have a license or you don't have it with you, so I can know who I'm talking to. Name and date of birth.
Can you step out of the car for me, man, please? Slowly. Come on over here. What's your name?
Trixie Lee.
Trixie Lee. How old are you?
17.
17. What's your friend's name?
Jeff Barnett.
How old is he?
21.
Is this his car?
No, it's mine.
It's your car? It's a pretty nice car.
Thanks.
You mind if I take a look at it?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's pretty cool. All right, come on over here and take a seat for me.
Okay.
Not too close to Jeff, all right?
Right here?
Right there's fine.
Dude, he says his name is Glenn Patton.
She told me his name is Jeff Barnett.
Jeff Barnett.
Yeah,
Got consent?
She gave me consent to take a look at it.
So go ahead and take a look.
All right. Wow. What'd you tell him my name was?
Jeff, what'd you tell me your name was?
Fucking stupid.
How was I?
Stupid, man.
What's up, man?
This car's extremely modified. I'm sure we can cite him for most of these violations right here.
Well, he's already 12,500. I mean, he doesn't have anything with him, so.
He's gonna be more than a 14601.
Dude, I don't feel comfortable. You're the mechanic. I don't know.
It's
Is
modified.
he missing some stickers or what?
It's missing more than that. He's got it quite. It's quite modified.
It's my stop. I don't feel comfortable, going at that. So let me call somebody over who knows a little bit more about this stuff. Is that cool?
That's a good idea.
All right. Robert Charles, 13 Adam. I need a 911 regarding vehicle modifications, Main and Lampkin.
This car looks pretty modified, so I don't know exactly what's been done to it. I recognize some things, but maybe you can help me out with it.
Okay. Well, the first one that is going to comes to mind is it's got no sticker on your cold air intake through here, which is required in California. The second one is you have your solenoid here, your solenoid here, which will mate up to the 2 tanks in the back.
Okay.
And the third, by running a second injection up here, with this section up here, this will generate another violation and make the entire air intake system a violation. So you're basically looking at 3.
3 violations?
Yeah, on top of whatever you...
Yeah, plus the moving violation.
Right.
His license is suspended anyways. So we'll be taking this one.
Yeah, somebody's gonna lose a nice car.
Hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate you coming out here.
Not a problem.
You checked me, didn't you? Well, have a seat.
Damn.
Watch your head.
Trixie, do you have a way to get home? You get someone you can call maybe? Come pick you up?
Yeah, are you gonna take my car or?
Yes.
You are?
Yes, we're taking your car. We're towing it.
How long are you gonna have it for?
At least 30 days.
Okay.
She just called for a ride. Someone's coming to pick her up right now. It's good for a 30-day hold.
30-day? Impound?
Yeah.
All right. Robert Charles, 13 Adam. Could I get a tow truck my location? It'll be a 30-day impound.
In our city, we have what we call the high-performance vehicle that mom or dad buys for the 16-year-old kid. That's formula for disaster because they're a low-performance driver and they're going to end up crashing that car. Many times the racers will have their cars registered in their girlfriend's name or someone else's name because their license is suspended or they might not even have a license. So you want to make sure that you check registration, run it through your station, and also check licenses and AKAs to make sure that the information that you're getting is true and correct.
When they are checking out the vehicles, if they're impounding them or during the course of the stop, they should be looking at the engine numbers, at other component numbers that are on the vehicle and checking those, running those in the computer to see if they are stolen items, because there is a tie-in between the auto theft and the street racing scene.
There's also a certain regard to looking out for auto theft. A lot of these vehicles are expensive, small import vehicles with a high theft rate, and you need a new motor, you go out and steal a car. So you have to take that into account. So you want to make sure that you check the vehicle to make sure there's no stolen parts or it's not a stolen vehicle also.
But you want to make sure that you're well versed, and if you don't know exactly what you're looking for under the hood, call someone over that does. Call your expert, talk to your people in your garages that take care of your vehicles if you aren't sure, because you don't want to make bad law by citing for the wrong sorts of things. The cost to a racer for the illegal modifications to the engine that affect the smog viability of the vehicle can get the racers in the pocketbook, and sometimes that's the only way you can get a hold of them. It's like hitting them with a 2x4 when you hit them in the pocketbook.
It's the car they're racing at night is also what they're driving to and from work, and taking it away is going to hurt them. It'll hurt them for a long time.
Trixie had a video camera, and that's a pretty common thing because they like to take videos of the things that they're doing and show it off to their friends. It's not a good idea to take those cameras for evidence from them because you run into all kinds of private property sorts of issues. You can always ask them though if you can make a copy of their video or if you can have their tape, and if they say yes, you know, get them to sign the standard release and I guess you're okay, but I wouldn't confiscate for evidence sake unless you have procedures in place that allow you to do that.
Yeah, as officers, when we impound a car, we need to be aware of the liability issues and the safety issues of the people that we're taking the car from, which means we can't just take the car and leave them standing on the street. We need to take them to either our police department or our substation, either call them a taxi cab, call their parent, call a friend to come pick them up. Leaving them on the street, you know, kind of opens them up to be a victim of a crime.
Write the sites and take these guys off the road one car at a time because you're going to save their life and maybe a neighbor's or family members by getting them off the road.
I know a lot of people that have nitrous in their cars. It's pretty well hidden. I've seen them get pulled over and they weren't, you know, it wasn't spotted. I got a ticket. It was almost like a training session because he called, I believe he called a sergeant, I believe, and he came out and he knew what he was doing. And it was a long process, but he was asking the right questions. He was trying to figure it out, and he was very nice to me. He's like, look, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to call my sergeant out here.
That's one of the best ways to familiarize yourself with what kind of parts and what kind of person you're talking to by asking them about the stickers, asking them about the cowling, ask about the different modifications. And if you're friendly and genuinely look interested in what they're doing, they're going to be a wealth of information, a fountain of information, and you can educate yourself a lot just by doing that. Also, take digital photographs of that vehicle and the parts that you have questions about, whether or not they're legal or illegal, or if they have carb stickers. And take those back to the station and ask around. Ask somebody that you think is an expert or has that type of knowledge. And later on, when you see that car again, you can make the stop and you can do the right kind of citation.
You know, most patrol officers don't have the expertise in automotive technology and cars, that sort of thing, that we just have to give them the information.
Some of the tools we've used from the Oakland Police Department to help our patrol officers or officers that come out and work on an overtime basis, we've provided them with cheat sheets, which is basically taking the vehicle code and shortening it up for them for the violations that are more prominent for them that they're going to use that night. By using the cheat sheet, the officers are given a tool that will make it easier for them instead of going through the vehicle code trying to locate the violation. We've broken it down into vehicle code equipment violations, driving violations. Some of the cheat sheets we have pictures. Makes it easier for the officers to see what part of the vehicle has the violation and what vehicle code section you can use for that part of the vehicle. It's easier for them to find the violation. It's easier for them to write it and move on to another vehicle or even tow that vehicle for certain violations.
The vehicle code has over 40,000 sections in it to use, and there's always a good vehicle code section for something. And if it's not there, don't write it.
One of the big things overlooked in investigations is that officers tend to look at this as just being a vehicle code crime because in California it is under the vehicle code section. So a lot of the time it's not so much overlooked, but it's downgraded. They'll just issue the citation, tow the vehicle, and be on their way. What they should do is a little more thorough investigation in that it is a misdemeanor, it is an arrestable offense, and they can prosecute through the district attorney's office. So they need to do a little bit better case as far as asking questions on where they live, where were they coming from, what kind of car, whose car it is, how fast does your car go. And in addition to all that, where it's majorly overlooked is interview people that are inside the car. Just like you would on a big crime scene, you would never interview somebody just sitting in the car. You're going to pull all 4 occupants out, divide them all up, sit them on the curb or put them somewhere else and ask them individually the same questions to either catch them in a lie or to make sure that they all have the same story.
If you take a hard-nosed approach, you're probably not going to get this violator to talk to you or to give an admission. If you take a kindler approach, usually they're more willing to talk to you. If you make them think that they're not going to get a warning or they might be able to get out of it, you find that they'll tell you anything that you want them to.
I think that if you talk to people in a respectful manner, you maintain their dignity, you maintain your dignity, you keep it on an even keel, You treat them with the respect that, they're going to give you. Most of the time, even badass gang members, hardcore parolees, whatever, they'll give you a certain amount of respect so long as you don't demean them and talk down to them, etc. Talk to them like a regular human being, treat them with respect, and it comes back to you.
Educate yourself, talk to people, and find out about street racing and how you can stop it one car at a time. Go to the vehicle code and research and be familiar with what the different statutes say. Go to performance shops and talk to the owners, talk to the guys that work there. And if you're friendly, if you seem genuinely interested, they're going to give you all the information you need. Go to the performance magazines and look at the ads, see what's out there. And then, of course, you can contact the agencies that have courses in street racing. San Diego PD has their Dragnet. California Air Resources has literature and courses that you can take.
I think the difference is going to come with education. I mean, officers just need to realize that this is a real problem. People are getting hurt, and it's I think the old attitude of it's no big deal. I raced when I was a kid, and these guys are going to race, and it's a phase, and they'll grow out of it. It's an old attitude that we really need to educate people out of. I think if we do the very minimum and teach our officers that this is a big problem, we need to handle this, and really encourage a strict enforcement of vehicle code laws. I think we can put a dent in it.
I think with today, with the media, the movies, the availability of high-performance vehicles, especially imports at low cost, the availability of stealing the parts, etc. I think that this problem is only going to expand. It's going to blossom into a very huge problem, and I think that it's everybody's problem. It's a community problem. It's a safety issue. It's a law enforcement problem. It's a problem for your insurance rates. I mean, it covers the whole scope of public safety, your pocketbook, etc. So I think it's not going to go away. It's something that's here to stay. It's something that's going to increase. It's something that's going to get more dangerous, and it's something that officers should pay close attention to should they happen to come upon it.
Looking beyond the traffic ticket and looking at all aspects of law enforcement will make even a bigger impact. If during a traffic stop, probable cause develops, take the opportunity to find out more. You'll often find that more serious crimes can be uncovered. The biggest issue with people racing is not the injuries to themselves, but the injuries and damage caused to other motorists using the same roads.
There's three terms that are frequently used when it comes to this event that we're talking about: drag racing, street racing, and speed contests. Speed contest is the term that's primarily used in the vehicle code describing the event in which two cars are competing on the street. Drag racing is the term that people that are out there racing legitimately would like to be able to focus in on their legitimate sport. And street racing is a term frequently used by police officers for what's occurring out there on the street, the illegal activity. Motorcycles, although they're similar, they're different. When it comes to the enforcement of motorcycles, we need to be able to broaden our horizons. You need to be able to quit focusing solely on the law that addresses illegal street racing or the speed contests. You need to start taking a look at reckless driving and exhibition of speed. You need to learn these laws very specifically because those are more addressed in the motorcycle end.
Well, for my recent intelligence gathering, we have our organized motorcycle problem, which appears to be street racing and show-off, sideshow, exhibition type issues. When they're involved in a speed contest, the rules are the same. A use of a motorcycle or use of a car in a speed contest, if there's an arrest made, the vehicle can be confiscated and impounded up to 30 days.
Two wheels is a lot different than four wheels, and it's very, very dangerous for a motorcycle to race a car because, again, you don't win. If you get in an accident with a car, you don't win. So generally the motorcycles stay with themselves. They're a lot faster than cars. They can come out of a crate stock going 180 miles an hour.
The high-tech motorcycles they have nowadays, these guys are able to produce phenomenal speeds, do great tricks on them, you know, wheelies, front end stands, donuts. I mean, you name it, these guys. Some of these guys are super gifted riders, fearless riders, and I think that's when the problem becomes exaggerated, because when they think they can handle almost anything, and when they start riding above their skill limit or above the skill limit of the general motoring public is when we start having the problems.
We've had several people out on the drag strip that they're racing, and they'll just come up on their back wheel and they'll go all the way down the track on one wheel. The capabilities of those bikes are just incredible. And so yeah, a lot of it's sideshow, it's showing off, it's performing.
Although the motorcycles, depending on the city that you end up going into, do associate with the street racers, their idea of the sport is dissimilar in several different ways. They're not necessarily racing each other. They're out there more for the stunt riding and for the long-term freeway or the road racing issues.
We already have had issues with baiting of our officers into pursuits, chasing these motorcycles down in an attempt to do enforcement actions, which have been unsuccessful. It's quite obvious that these individuals are prepared to bait the officer into a chase, get him into the chase, and that's where we have to educate our younger officers and our officers on the issues of safety and more tactical ways of handling the problem, as opposed to getting into pursuit and endangering the whole public.
Officer safety in our city, it's not uncommon, knowing that the police are on scene, to basically taunting the officers, trying to egg the officers into becoming involved in a pursuit or to challenge them in an enforcement type mode.
When the chase comes, they pay attention to who it is that's chasing them, and they go into somebody else's jurisdiction.
Our shop really likes to promote safety when we're racing. We have several drag bikes down there, and it's a safe alternative to street racing. And we'd really like to see more tracks around in our area and more promotions of the racetracks to keep the kids off the street, because you know what, we don't want our young people dying.
It's very hard as an investigator to see life being taken tragically, but to be taken tragically because somebody is being stupid or lawless acts where they have no regard for public safety is very hard.
Right now,
oh yeah. As long as you don't have
Drake has been talking to him.
The front wheel impacts the curb right here.
This guy go to the hospital?
Nope. And you can see this is the fork. This is the section that struck 5 foot up on the strikes here. Impacts. The rider of the bike's ejected. He bounces off these two vehicles right here, but he ended up right here after bouncing off two parked vehicles.
Street races take on various forms. Some are highly organized, involving tens or hundreds of people. Then there are those that are spontaneous or spur of the moment, involving two willing motorists in traffic.
We call them streets. They call them racetracks.
On the street, what you normally see is a straightaway, similar to what you see over my shoulder. Wide enough for two vehicles, normally an industrial park, 1/8 of a mile in length for the race, but then there's a distance prior to the start line and a distance afterwards to be able to brake.
They need a street that's wide enough that they can put the spectators' cars on both sides of the street and run the races down the center of the street. And so the main street that they race on in our city is 2 lanes in each direction and a wide center median. And there's no obstructions through that whole long racing spot that would keep them from racing on that area.
One of the reasons why they choose an industrial park is because the racing is conducted late in the evenings. Nobody travels through industrial parks. Generally speaking, all the people that attend the businesses are closed. Police don't go by there because all the businesses are closed. Generally speaking, they don't have any security. So it's a good venue for them to be able to go when it comes to no interference at all. The other thing about industrial parks, if you take a look at all the streets are straightaways. They're set in blocks and long straightaways. It allows a place for the spectators to be able to participate and be able to observe the races, because normally the street is lower than the industrial park or the buildings. So there's a higher venue, almost like bleachers, for the spectators to be able to observe. They have multiple ingress and egress. They want to be able to set up the places where they can get in, set up for their races and be able to race, but they also want a place where they can get away when the cops arrive.
We have a impromptu problem with our teenagers all over the city. A couple fast imports or pickup trucks or whatever will line up on a line and pick any street in the city and take off and create a race for themselves. We also have a few isolated areas where we have a few isolated individuals towards our city limits that don't get as much patrolled, where we've had reports of speeding vehicles involved in speed contests, etc.
The Sheriff's Department has a kind of a new and growing problem now in the rural area of the county with large organized illegal races. I think the street racers favor the unincorporated parts of Fresno County because there's nobody out there. There's nobody to complain. They're probably not going to disturb anybody. There's not a lot of houses, less traffic. It's easier for them to block off the roads and take control of a section of roadway, and less police officers, really. If you go out to the rural parts of the county, there may only be a couple deputies handling that area.
The unfortunate thing is most of this activity happens 11, 12 o'clock at night. The traffic division gets off at 10 o'clock, so it becomes a patrol problem, and we don't have a lot of communication with the guys that work the graveyard shift.
Another problem we're running into is they're very organized. They're using scanners, they're using lookouts. So when we send our 1 or 2 patrol officers that way, maybe CHP alongside us, it's hard to catch because they're gone before we get there in a lot of cases.
As they're going from spot to spot, I mean, you get walkie-talkies, cell phones. I mean, that's how you kind of would know that they're coming or hear it.
Now, part of the problem with enforcement in the patrol area is you really do feel outnumbered, because not only do you have to deal with the street racers that are out there in your sector or your area, but you've got to deal with all the other calls that are going on at the same time. We are handling it in a community problem-solving area rather than as a traffic problem. At one time, we had about 10 different areas where the street racers would congregate and do the illegal racing. In the business areas where our long industrial streets, we changed the environment to make it less attractive. We've put in what we call speed humps, and they're like a speed bump, but they're only about 3 inches tall at the center, and they stretch from gutter to gutter. And where we have put those in, it eliminated the racing completely. There's an industrial area that's still being developed. We try to get with the planning and have that put into the cost of developing. That way it's already there. And the nice thing about the speed hump is it's removable. In other areas, the City of Ontario has passed temporary street closures where we don't allow any cars on those streets between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. We want to keep statewide statistics and national statistics so we can know that what we're doing out here is having an impact on the problem and hopefully lessening the problem to the point where they take it to the legal tracks. So we went out and we videotaped the street racers and what they were doing out there at night. And we started an education process.
There's several issues that video cameras present at street racing scenes. The first being that officers need to be aware that they are being videotaped. Many of the people who go and watch the street racing and the street racers themselves have videotapes to record the events. When officers pull over the street racers or do enforcement actions within the large groups, most of these cameras are rolling, so we want officers to be aware that that is going on and that everything they're doing and saying is being recorded. On the other hand, we want to utilize the videotapes also, and so we encourage units that are doing enforcement actions to videotape this. It's great evidence of the racing that can be used later in court. It can also be used to identify people that may get away and be utilized to later apprehend them.
If you're going to go out and videotape at the races, you better look like all the other folks that are out there videotaping. And if you're the only one there with a camera, you can expect to be challenged. When we first started our operation, our unit, there were cameras everywhere out at the street races. Everybody was videotaping. And once we started making arrests and court cases started going in, and they found out, hey, Dragnet's identified us off videotape. Video cameras disappeared from the street racing circuit in San Diego. So we had to find other ways of going out and doing our surveillance and making our arrests.
There's spectators whose lives are in danger. They don't realize it. In fact, my partner and I will work undercover at times, and I don't even like being a spectator there videotaping because I'm afraid one of these guys are going to lose control and take us out. So it's very dangerous.
You have to be aware that there are other criminal elements that are involved in this activity.
There's a Carl's Jr. in the city of Ontario that had over $10,000 worth of vandalism in one night alone, where they tore video cameras off the walls and they spray painted, broke windows. You get all these people together and they kind of have that, they're anonymous, in a big group like that. If it's just a couple people, someone can be picked out and identified. But if it's in a big group and they're all doing the same thing at a time, they feel like they can get away with it a lot easier.
Other criminal activity, such as gang activity, also plays into account, and fights and the potential for violence when you have a large amount of young adults late at night that have been drinking or using drugs is also there. So officer safety is always the paramount issue when you're out working.
When we started looking at the problem of the street racers coming into the city, we were looking at what was attracting them to our city, and a lot of the attraction was legal venues. We have probably about 60 movie theaters at our Ontario Mills Mall out there. So they're being drawn for legitimate reasons, but then they either discovered or, by word of mouth usually, and it's also posted on the internet, that this was a place to go to race. So what we did was we started looking at what laws we can enforce and what was creating the problem. And we figured that part of the problem was the spectators, because if you don't have the spectators out there, and about 95% of the people that are out there for the illegal races are spectators. There's only a handful that actually will get out there and race their cars.
Spectators, it's a pretty broad spectrum, but the spectators are really almost the same as the street racers, same age group of people. It's a social event, and so they go to these events sometimes to watch races, sometimes to meet other people.
And they will come in and they'll block up legitimate businesses, gas stations, and fast food restaurants, and once they start coming in, it just locks everything up. So when the businesses came to us and asked us for a solution, we had to figure out a way to either move the racers on or close down the business. And some of the businesses did opt to close their businesses after about 11 o'clock at night just to avoid that problem. But others have put in bars, gates, some big metal gates that they can actually close off their parking lots and still leave the drive-thrus open if it's a fast food business. Other businesses that are completely closed that are in the area, what they'll do is they'll just put chains across the parking lots to keep the racing cars out of their parking lots, because they'll go in there, they'll fill them up, they'll loiter, they'll graffiti on the walls, urinate in the corners, drinking, sometimes drugs, all kinds of stuff.
Things that businesses can do would be things such as posting signs for no trespassing and being willing to follow through with prosecution of trespassers on their property in cooperation with the police. There may be some design changes like lighting in certain places or putting some other impediments in the way to make these areas not a place that's attractive to congregate.
The average person in the city of Ontario doesn't know that there's street racing going on the streets, because it normally starts at about 11 o'clock p.m. and goes through the morning till about 4 a.m., 3 or 4 a.m. And most of the people are at home sleeping at that time. But the biggest thing is to educate the officers that are out working on the street on what laws we have on the books and what city ordinances and how we enforce them. And so they feel comfortable when they go out there that they can do this, and not to get overwhelmed if there's 30, 40, 50 cars in a parking lot at one time, just to kind of deal with it one car at a time.
And once you've established a perimeter and you've established the races are going on, you can slowly condense it in, funnel them into an area where you can deal with them one at a time as they come out. And that way you can go ahead and take pictures of the cars, the license plates, and identify the drivers. And hopefully by that time you've also identified who was actually involved in the race, and you can get them for the speed contest.
we're all responsible for reducing the incidence of illegal street racing on the street. You can't put the burden on law enforcement. You can't put it solely on the parents. You can put it solely on the people that are out there participating. But when it comes to reducing the incidence of illegal street racing, that's unlikely. So you need to be able to incorporate everybody into the problem-solving situation. You need to bring in the parents. You need to bring in the community. You need to bring in the city council. And the city council is important for legislation issues. You need to bring in the judges, because if all your enforcement is top-notch, accurate, professional, you bring in the judges and the judges are unaware of any of these laws, all this is going to get thrown out of court. You need to bring in the city attorneys, because this is brand new legislation, brand new laws that people are unfamiliar with. You need to get them up to speed.
Thank you for coming in today, Mr. Randolph. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come talk to us. This is Officer Wagner.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for meeting with us.
How do you do? Pleased to meet you. He's going to be showing us a video a little bit later. Why don't you have a seat over there? Get the meeting started. The reason why we had you come in today is that we're having a huge problem with illegal street racing. Friday and Saturday nights, about 200 to 300 kids show up with their cars and just drive around, and it's really taken away from our ability to answer other radio calls because we're constantly dealing with these street racers. Officer Wagner's going to show you a tape, kind of details what kind of problem we're having.
As you're aware, we had a fatality accident on Friday night, and I want to show you just a little bit about what occurred just leading up to that fatality accident. Just to give you a little history about what occurred just prior to this, what these kids end up doing is they congregate 100 to 200 kids. They all come to like a gas station. They usually start around 10 o'clock at night, and usually there's only a few of them, maybe 3 or 4.
Here we go. Let me rock.
What's up, Dirty?
What's going on, bro?
How's it going?
Pretty good. How about you?
Pretty good. Long time no see, man. Nice wheels.
You like it?
Yeah, totally. Been working on this, haven't you?
Yeah.
Great. That's how. How's it going? Good to see you. Holy crap. Guys, good number for this. Put everything in, 30 colors. Amazing. Looks sweet. This place is pretty cool. Where'd you find it?
Found it over the internet.
Wow, really?
Yeah, about 3 months ago. I've been coming here every weekend.
How safe is it?
It's safe. Cops come, they'll shoo us off, we come back.
Sweet. Right on, let's get racing. Looking good.
Well, here they are. Doesn't look like there's too many up here right now, but I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 in the back here. We'll see what they're up to.
Let's check it out.
You know, in about 15 or 20 minutes, there'll be like 10 times as many as there is right now. At least. It doesn't take 15, 20 minutes before you see about 50 of them in here.
Shit, dude, cops are here. What are we gonna do?
Don't worry about it.
Just let them pass. Yeah. It's driving a little slow, man.
Just hang out until they tell us to leave.
All right. Right on.
You know, most of these guys drive from all over the area, so they're not even from this area. They come out here to look at all the cars and try to go find some illegal street racing later. With this guy. He probably has about 40 grand in his car right there. It's amazing that little Honda was about 15 grand. It's probably worth 40 now.
So, is that you over there? Yeah, that's me. What you got under there? 58 nitrous. Yeah.
What do you got?
Got that 87 Buick Grand National right there.
You want to run them or what?
Yeah, man.
How much? Let me see some money.
I got
500 or more, that's it.
That's exactly what I got, man. That's
Big
perfect.
Rock. Let's go to Big Rock right now.
Big Rock?
Let's go.
Let's go. Let's run them.
Let's go.
Well, you want to head back to the gas station? I bet there's a ton of them there now.
I think you're right. Let's go for it.
All right. Did you see those kids just look at me when I drove through there last time?
Yeah. They know. They know.
Project 86. Project 86. Take 5 seconds. Think about this crew. And who will win?
Well, let's see if we could clear some of these kids out of here, taking over the entire gas station.
Look how many there are.
There's tons of them. You know, none of them are going to listen to what I say. That was pretty much pointless, but they're out for now. Well, now that we cleared them out of the gas station, you know they're going to be heading off to all the racetracks in the industrial areas. So one would cruise over there, and sometimes even in a black and white, we can catch them racing. Usually pick off one or two of them, we catch them racing, we can impound their car, and maybe detour a few more from racing this weekend.
Sure, they'll be there.
That's my boy. I got better way.
Attention all units, River City Central. Officer assistance requested.
All right, sounds like that call is ours.
High-speed vehicle collision at 1500 block Lombard Avenue. Emergency medical en route. Reports of large-scale activity and multiple injuries at scene.
Copy that, we'll be en route.
10-4.
Alrighty. Well, sounds like another street racing fatality. These kids are ever going to learn. This is crazy. Every single weekend they're getting in accidents. Well, better respond code 3.
They'll leave this little gas station area and they'll meet up and they'll start their illegal street racing, which occurred on Friday night where we had that fatality that you're aware of.
I see what you mean. You know, aside from the fatality, I wasn't aware of the enormity of the problem. I don't even think the city council is aware of what's really going on out there.
In addition to the dangerous nature of it, I mean, the other thing we're having problems with is the big crowds of people. They get together, they're destroying property, they're selling drugs, they're getting into fights, they're committing all kinds of crimes outside of just the street racing. So some things that cities in the past have done that had the same problem, they've passed city ordinances that make it illegal for people to be spectators at these events. That way it cuts down the amount of people that are there. It makes it the people who are watching just as guilty as the people who are racing. So that's a deterrent. Second thing is temporary street closures. Pass an ordinance where between the nighttime hours, certain streets are closed, so that takes away the street racers' place where they street race, and they're forced to find other areas, maybe funnel them into one particular area where we can handle them there. And the third one, which is pretty important also, is vehicle forfeiture. You get caught for street racing, your car gets impounded, forfeited, sold. Guy doesn't have a car to race anymore, he can't race, problem solved. So those are the main 3 points that we're trying to get passed so we can get rid of this problem.
Well, I am in total support of zero tolerance on this. And I will definitely do my best to see that the city council addresses the need for an ordinance and the urgency to have it passed.
Thank you, sir. Here's this tape, and why don't you show them what's happening on Friday and Saturday nights.
Thank you very much. I will bring this to the next city council meeting.
When you're trying to get a city ordinance passed, a lot of times it helps a lot if you go and you get people that are involved in the process, whether it's the city manager or city attorney or even the city council people, to come out with you and get in the car and drive them out to the areas and show them what's actually happening out there. Or you can use videotape footage. There are several people that can tape it for you. A lot of times the forensic units at the police department, they have video cameras. A lot of people that work undercover stuff have video cameras. And once they see it, they'll realize how big the problem is and that there needs to be some kind of action taken to address that problem. It usually starts with 4 or 5 people in the parking lot, then another carload comes in, and what used to be 2 to 4 cars turns into 30, 40, 100 cars, and by that time it's so out of control as far as enforcement tactics you can use that you have to call in all kinds of resources, and it's kind of taxing. Once you start seeing the cars pull into the parking lot, the kids are getting out, they're standing around, they're not doing any legitimate business. If you stop the car, you get out, you walk up to them, you make contact with them, you let them know, we don't tolerate this in the city, there's no loitering, there's no racing, here's some of the laws, some of the ordinances that we in this city enforce, and we suggest that you go somewhere else. There's a section out now where you can tow a car for 30 days if they're reckless driving or if they're exhibition of speed, if they're doing donuts in the parking lot or driving recklessly. They don't need to be engaged in a race because a lot of that activity happens out where the racing is, but it's not an actual 2-car street race. And a lot of times the 30-day tows, that's $800, $900 before they get their car out. And you get the message across that if you're gonna be street racing in the city, it's gonna be expensive, and we're not gonna ignore you.
I know it's wrong because the law says it's wrong, but if I want to race, I should be able to race, and especially if I do it in an environment that I feel is as safe as I can for me and everyone else around me.
If you ignore the problem or don't address it when it's small, it's just going to keep growing and getting larger and larger.
It's midnight, and a crowd has gathered on a quiet residential street to watch the sideshow. Squealing tires, drunken brawls, and all-out civil disobedience erupts. An adrenaline rush for a traveling mob, but a very real nightmare for a sleeping neighborhood. Spinning donuts on a public street, missing spectators by inches is simply a recipe for tragedy.
The sideshow started in the late 80s, early 90s at Eastmont Mall Shopping Center. And young adults used to congregate there, show off their cars. It's pretty much a boy meets girl type of social scene. People predominantly in their mid-20s, I think the average age is about 26 years old. After the clubs close, people are still looking for a social event where they can meet other people. There's some civil disobedience involved, of course, with the donut spinning, drag racing. There's a lot of alcohol and drugs involved as well. And people will congregate in a location, a large parking lot, an intersection. They'll spin donuts and they'll gather a crowd of spectators to watch. What ended up happening was there was such a large crowd there, and so many people got together with the alcohol and the drugs. Women were being assaulted, and we tried to put a stop to it by closing off the mall and not letting people congregate there. Forcing them out onto the street, of course, they needed a new venue, and it ended up being the streets themselves and large commercial parking lots in other parts of East Oakland. And once the word got out that it was happening and how many people were actually coming out, that's when we started getting participants and spectators from all over the place.
You have a street that's approximately 1.5 miles long that's probably about 120 feet wide, gives them ample opportunity to do what they want to do. So any large intersection that has an area for the peds or area for the cars to stop, they've taken over a complete intersection in 4 directions, done their thing in the center of the intersection, everybody jumps back in their cars, and then they move on to another location. It takes just one call, and that one call goes out to 10, and 10 more go out to 100, and it creates the atmosphere for the people to come into one certain area because now we've started a sideshow activity. So it makes it a little difficult for us. We really can't pinpoint a location because it just springs up, it just happens.
There's a lot of violence associated with the sideshows. There's a lot of weapons out on the street. When you combine that with alcohol and drugs, people get shot, stabbed. People have been intentionally run over with cars. The actual sideshow activity itself, the spinning of the donuts, what commonly happens is the spectators will surround a car that's spinning donuts at a high rate of speed, and they'll be hit by the cars.
When they talk about donuts, they refer to swinging it. You know, can you get out there and swing your car, or he can't swing it, or she can't swing it, because we do have female participants sometimes. The old school cars, or the buckets, you see those cars out there.
And there's fights. We have had instances where we've had sexual assaults, reckless driving, and dogfighting going on all at the same time in a large parking lot in Oakland. And we've caught it on videotape, and it's amazing, when you see all these people get together, that this is actually fun.
There unfortunately is no crime for being stupid. Like those that are out there trying to slap the car, we haven't come up with any laws to grab the spectators yet.
The problems associated with a sideshow for us are manpower. We have limited resources in Oakland. We have a lot of violent crime, a lot of calls for service. I think we average between 850 and 900,000 calls a year for service. And when the sideshows happen, they're usually on a Friday, Saturday night, or on a night where there's a holiday. And that's when our calls for service are usually at their greatest. So it's very taxing on our personnel resources. The burden on the police department financially has been pretty enormous. For us to put enough people out on the street on an overtime basis to handle a large sideshow incident or venue is about $40,000 a night. For us to maintain order after we have gotten the sideshows under control over several weekends of putting a lot of people out on the street, it generally costs us about $15,000 to $20,000 in overtime.
Yeah, when we do the major tow sweeps with the sideshow cars, it takes a lot of manpower. It takes involving the tow truck companies to stage their tow trucks. It takes a lot of sworn and non-sworn personnel to do the paperwork on towing the cars. We have to sometimes move the car from one location to where we set up a staging area to tow the cars. We can have between 70 and 75 people out there involved in dealing with this one particular tow sweep.
So it really takes valuable resources away from normal police duties, which include homicides, robberies, felony assaults, things of that nature, a lot of domestic violence calls, and put them on the sideshow to ensure that one doesn't happen. So regardless of whether there's a sideshow or not, resources are oftentimes shifted to ensure that there is no sideshow. So it has a big impact on the daily operation of the police department.
It can have a negative effect on the regular officers assigned out there because they know the weekend's coming, they know it's going to be a warm weekend, they know it's a holiday weekend. They're going to have to deal with the sideshow in addition to their regular calls. They're probably going to get held over to deal with it.
We had officers from outside agencies voluntarily come in to supplement our ranks, and it turned out to be very effective in two ways. Number one, we had an enormous amount of help. Up to 50 officers from outside agencies and the California Highway Patrol came in, did traffic enforcement and DUI enforcement. It helped us out, but it also gave officers from outside agencies experience that they wouldn't normally have involving sideshow activity and a large amount of traffic control issues related to the sideshow. So it was valuable in that regards, and we've actually had these agencies voluntarily call us up during the sideshow season to come in and help us out at their own expense. So it's been very helpful. Approximately 2 years ago, when we put a big push on the sideshow participants, we basically moved them out of Oakland and we displaced them. So what we ended up seeing was them traveling down the highway to San Leandro, to Hayward, to Fremont, causing their problems down there.
The normal patrol officer that's assigned to that part of town, that becomes now part of their problem. So they're handling calls for service, or those calls for service now have to stand while they are chasing these cars from intersection to intersection, different parts of the district to different parts of the district. So that's now added on to their duties.
So what we have now is a cooperation with all of the Alameda County Police Departments and the California Highway Patrol, where if we do displace it, we in turn will leave our city and go help them out in their areas.
It has to be a joint effort between the officers that are assigned out there and the task force and other overtime officers that we end up putting out there to deal with it. Just one squad of patrol officers is not going to be able to handle the problem.
units reported sideshow activity at the Valley Terrace Business Complex. Reports of multiple vehicles, spinning donuts, and reckless driving. Possible sideshow. Any units to respond?
3 Lincoln 31, I copy. I'm en route.
3 Lincoln 34. Copy the cover call.
480 Delta. I'm in the area and I'm in civilian clothes. I've got a video camera with me and I can get up on top of this building and videotape the action for you and direct the units.
Look at that.
3 Lincoln 31, we have a large sideshow here. We're going to need a few additional units to help secure the lot.
I've got a position up here on top of the tenant building. I'm videotaping the action. I can direct the units from here.
450, I'm on scene. Have the arriving units go to the east and west entrances to the parking lot. Once they're in place, have them start taking down the offenders.
Copy that. Copy.
450, is the helicopter available to assist?
Bogus. 450, affirm. We will be there in 2 minutes.
450, have the undercover units advise on all offending vehicles.
Copy. I have a 99 Plymouth Prowler. License plate California 4 Henry X-Ray Baker 110. That vehicle is traveling eastbound through the lot, proceeding towards the east exit. Copy?
450, allow the pedestrians to get out of the area. Meter the vehicles at the exits in different directions so they can't regroup.
I copy.
Copy. Perimeter officers, maintain your positions. Enforcement units, maintain a zero-tolerance effort on the remaining vehicles and spectators. Dispatch, have the tow trucks stage across the street away from the crowds.
Sir, step out of the car.
Excuse me?
Step out of the car.
What? Why?
I want you to stand right here for me, please. Put your hands behind your head.
What?
Spread your feet. Do you have any identification or weapons on you?
No. Why are you doing this? What is this for?
Okay, put this hand to your ear, please.
This is ridiculous. What are you doing this for? I didn't do a damn thing.
You're being arrested for your street activity.
What street activity?
Bring your hand down behind your back.
I can't believe it. This is ridiculous.
Take him this way.
Right, you two, your names have been added to a database. What that means is, catch you out here next time, your vehicle will be impounded. All right? Here's a list of what can happen to you next time we catch you out here. There's also a list of some legal racing venues. All right? So why don't you just head on home? We don't want to see you out here again. All right, have a good night.
Able 450, how does it look from up there?
Yeah, it looks 90% contained. There's around 10 cars left, half at the south end and the rest near the east end.
Civil disobedience is a heavy factor that is tied in with sideshow activities. Therefore, fast and swift response with adequate backup is most effective in preventing a large-scale crowd situation from occurring.
Well, when we first get a call about possible sideshow activity, if the helicopter is available, we send it overhead so we can figure out how large the gathering is, to coordinate the responding units. If the helicopter's not available, then we have to send a car in or have a car drive by to tell us how large the crowd is and where it is. And then we start coordinating responding units to deal with the problem. Well, having undercovers is very important that can videotape, that way they can get in and next to, involved with the crowd, where they can actually get video of the cars doing sideshow activity, which is spinning donuts, driving recklessly. They can get in a little closer than any marked car can or any uniformed officer can. They get in by a car, or there are certain areas that the sideshow generally participates in, some parking lots where we can already get the undercovers there and up on the roof of some of the buildings to videotape from above. Once we get them in an area where we want them, or they're already in the area that they're participating in, we coordinate with responding units to respond to certain driveways so that they can't get out. We'll send a car into the lot to deal with the participating cars, and the other units will block the driveways, so when it comes time for the cars to leave, we're meting them out so they just won't just escape. The best way to meter them out is to send them different directions. We send them out of the different ways from the lot at different intervals, and towards, some we send east, some we send west, but we don't let them all go the same way at the same time. Kind of space them out as we put them out. Well, enforcement of the law is one of our biggest deterrent in it. So if we can go in and cite anybody that's involved, or arrest anybody that we can that's involved, and tow the car, that's the biggest deterrent that we have. The most important thing to keep in mind is officer safety. When folks are trying to get away, officer safety is always more important than capturing the bad guy.
I think the most important thing is not to rush in and try to alleviate the problem on your own. Oftentimes, we've had officers enter an intersection only to have their cars destroyed, them injured, the officers injured. Because when you're dealing with a crowd that large and there's weapons and objects available for them to throw at you, there's no way you can identify who's doing it, and it's very easy to get hurt with an object that's lobbed out of the crowd, a bottle or a rock. So the best thing for you to do is to sit back, call for assistance, and contain the scene. Not letting anybody else in, but slowly having everybody leave the area.
It's imperative for an officer that comes upon a sideshow or a large-scale disturbance to utilize all his resources. In our city, it's not uncommon for participants that are engaged in a sideshow activity, knowing that the police are on scene, to continue this type of activity. If an officer comes to the scene of a sideshow and has a plan and utilizes all his resources, you can pretty much eliminate the escape of the violator. And if you have enough staff and officers and resources on scene, you can pretty much eliminate the risk or challenge of the event.
It's imperative that you bring resources in immediately to disperse the crowds, to meter traffic, and to let people know by way of citations and the towing of vehicles that a sideshow will not be allowed to grow.
If we're prepared for it, there's officers staged all over the place, the helicopters up, and we follow it from the air and away from the land and pick them up there. But generally, we won't chase from the scene.
In regards to a pursuit, of course, each department is going to have its own pursuit policy. Generally, if there's reckless driving involved, some departments may or may not let you pursue a vehicle for a reckless driving charge. However, you can observe the car, get the license plate. If you have a helicopter available to you, it's very easy to follow that car until the car sets down someplace and then maybe take the person into custody.
Our traffic enforcement or motor unit within the city of Fresno dedicates a lot of their time and resources to combat this type of activity. We'll augment when we go out to do our search and find DUI operations. We'll dedicate motor officers to target these known intersections where we have sideshow problems, and that has proven to be effective.
Well, it's kind of funny because the sideshows kind of take on a life of their own. Early on, when we had probably our most intense sideshow activity over the last 3 or 4 years, we discovered that cell phones and actually the radio media were contributing significantly to identifying where a sideshow was going to happen. Through cell phones and just through verbal communication, people would pick a place. They've even had hand signals where 1, 2, 3, 5, they knew which location they were going to go to next. So there was really no need to say anything, just a hand signal, and everybody would shift over to this new location. One of the things that we did is we contacted several of the rap and hip hop stations in the Bay Area and asked them to stop promoting the sideshow. We have quite a good relationship with the local media stations in the Oakland area. And with the radio stations as well. And as we looked at different ways to attack the sideshow problem, one of the things we were looking at was involving the media and letting the people know, first of all, that we were taking an active role in trying to prevent it, and second of all, showing the terrible things that did happen at the sideshow in an effort to get people to open their eyes and see that this was really a dangerous thing to do.
We've gotten some help from the media. I've seen several billboards around East Oakland that say, use your car in a sideshow, lose your car. You know, so it's advertised and it's there for them to see every day. They get the message when they see us take the car, when they see us take people to jail. But there are still those that want to chance it. That's the thrill of it, the civil disobedience, to go out and try to do it and get away with it.
We've dealt with young people that have been killed because of the sideshow activities, and now we as investigators have to deal with their parents, have to explain to them that they were involved in activity that they shouldn't have been involved in, and it's very hard for the parents or family members to accept that no, their children were good children, they didn't do this, they weren't involved in this. And from our standpoint, we know exactly what they were doing and where they were going.
In January of 2000, we formed a sideshow task force, and what we did was we realized from the beginning that this wasn't just a police problem, that we needed to involve the community, we needed to involve the city government in order to get some legislation passed or an ordinance passed. So we brought many people from the community, and we have neighborhood crime prevention councils, which we tasked with sending in individuals to be on the task force, to throw out ideas, and to help us plan a way to alleviate the sideshow problem. We also brought in people from city council, from public safety, public works. The community was very important because they came out in force on the street, and they basically held protests on several of these intersections and several of these parking lots, saying they did not want the sideshow anymore, that they wanted peace, they wanted quiet, they didn't want any of their sons and daughters being attacked. We had to go to the California State Legislature, and with cooperation from the Oakland City Council and Senator Don Parada, we ended up getting the Ukendra Johnson Act passed through, which allowed us to tow and hold a sideshow car for 30 days. The Ukendra Johnson Act is named after Ukendra Johnson, who was killed in a sideshow-related incident. She was not a participant. She was the passenger in a vehicle that was traveling up a street, and she was broadsided by a person that was involved in some sideshow activity, which was spinning of donuts and reckless driving. We got that legislation passed, and it's helped us tremendously. Other things that we've done to slow down the sideshow is we initiated a chaining ordinance through the city council, which mandated that any large business that had more than 10 parking spaces, 10 or more parking spaces, was required to lock or chain their lots up at night.
The experience of the traffic officers coming in with zero tolerance is anything that moved, that had a violation on it, was getting a ticket. And we found that as we educated our beat officers to the traffic enforcement or the vehicle code violations, they were now taking a more approach or direct approach in dealing with the problem, eliminating the cars and trying to eliminate the participants before they even got into the sideshow atmosphere.
Once we are out on the street and we see any sideshow activity starting, we immediately go in and start taking people's cars away from them. Now, towing and holding a car for 30 days might not seem like much to some people. However, it can be very expensive. Not only do you lose your car for 30 days, but it costs you an average of $1,500 to get your car out after the 30 days is up. And for many people, that's pretty costly.
So there's a large impact throughout the community, both financially and emotional, because of the sideshow activities and what it brings to us.
Street racers put more than their own lives at risk. In many cases, pedestrians, passengers, and motorists are killed for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Illegal street racing is a needless act, often victimizing those who are not even participating in the race.
Street racing has a major impact on emergency services. If there's a major collision that's involved in one of these street races, it will utilize a lot of personnel, not just police personnel to handle the investigation of the collision, but also other emergency services such as paramedics and the fire department to come out and handle that.
When we're looking at a first responder going to a scene of a possible accident involving an illegal street race, we want the guys that are responding to be aware of activity leaving the area. A lot of times that these people, say an accident or an incident occurs, they're gone within a very few minutes. He can be aware as he enters the area, especially if he is familiar with the area as being a location known for speed contest or racing. Keep an eye out for the cars that are leaving. Watch them, see which ones are leaving. They may be participants. They may be some of the spectators involved. They may also be witnesses. He wants to keep those in mind, so when he gets to the scene, say he's got a single vehicle crash, there may be another vehicle involved or two vehicles involved in the speed contest. He may be able to recognize those vehicles as leaving the area as he came in. Maybe an assault with a vehicle, it may be a street race, it may just be an accident. Don't close your mind immediately upon getting on the scene and saying it's just an accident. Dwell into it a little bit further. If it appears to be a street racing incident, try to document as much of the scene as possible, as soon as possible. If you can video the crowd, the vehicles, etc., if you get there soon enough, they still may be in the area, or they may linger and loiter in the area for a while and then leave. This can become a great investigative tool for later, because you may identify participants in that particular race off your videos.
From a prosecutor's perspective, I'm always looking at two things. How can I prove my case, and can I overcome defenses? And it's important for the first officer who arrives at the scene, for example, to make sure we can put the defendant behind the wheel of the car, to get statements from those who actually saw the crash itself, and carefully document the scene.
It's also suggested that you do door knocking for witnesses, independent witnesses in the neighborhood, or people that work in the area. Usually they utilize large commercial areas or business complexes. There's people out there working. Door knock, talk to the security guards, talk to the truck drivers, the warehousemen, whoever is out there working at the time, and see if you can get some independent witnesses. A lot of these facilities have video cameras for security. You might want to see if they have a video camera for security at their facility that may have picked up portions of your race or spectators of your race. Another aspect you want to look for is you want to go to the gathering place. Check the gathering place out. Is there a surveillance camera available at the gathering place, such as a gas station or a local liquor store lot or something like that? See if you can get some kind of cooperation with the business owner on obtaining a copy of that tape.
In my most recent trial, I charged two defendants with murder. One actually crashed into the car. The other one was not involved in a collision. He was able to swerve out of the way and didn't even come in contact with the victim's car. But my theory was that it takes two to race. You're not going to street race by yourself, and because they were both racing, I charged both of them with murder.
All-night hangouts where challenges are made and bets are laid. Blocked off highways overtaken by competing racers and their convoys. Back alley territorial scuffles between draggers. Garages where speed junkies invest endless time and money to create the ultimate power-enhanced vehicle.
I want emergency, this Marie.
I was over here on fire site. These people just crashed and their car's on fire and they just died. They just split in half.
Are there people trapped in the car?
Yeah, already they're dead. They're dead, they're on fire, their face is on fire. We just pulled up.
What I need you to do is secure the scene, run some more tape over here, and keep the crowd back.
You got it, Sarge.
See if you can find some witnesses, get their preliminary information, get their IDs, and we can get their full statements later.
Consider them.
Yep. We need to start looking for evidence and preserving it. Can you get started on that?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead and start on this car, see if you can find any open containers, anything like that.
All right, Sarge, I'm on it.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. It's just frustrating. These kids just don't get it.
Yeah. It's a shame. One of the witnesses said that this might be a street race. See if you can find a start line somewhere. Try maybe down the street over there.
You got it, Sarge. Sergeant. Didn't find any open containers. However, I did see some modifications on the vehicle. It definitely looks like a street racer.
Okay, you know what? Make sure lab photographs it and tell AID.
All right, 10-4.
Excuse me, you see what happened here
No,
tonight?
man, I didn't see a thing.
Okay, do you know who was involved in this collision?
I didn't see the race. I don't know.
I didn't ask you anything about a race.
Well, I didn't even see the second car.
What about a second car?
Man, I don't know anything. I don't want to get involved.
Hold on. Let me explain something to you. There's laws and ordinances against spectators at these kinds of races also. So I'm going to re-ask you this question. I want you to be honest. Did you see a race here tonight?
Yeah, but I was far down the street. I couldn't make out who they were.
Okay, what did the other car look like?
It was a white Nissan.
Sergeant, I have a woman over here who says her son was driving the car.
Okay, I'll go talk to her.
Okay.
Hi, ma'am. I understand you think your son may be involved here. What's his name?
Yes, his friend called and said there'd been racing, and he got into an accident. And his name is Darren Phillips.
Yes, ma'am. We believe that's the name of the driver.
Where is my son? Is he all right?
I'm sorry, ma'am. This was a terrible accident. He didn't make it.
Sergeant Lewis, tell us what happened tonight.
It appears at this time that we've had a serious traffic collision that's resulted in 2 fatalities and 1 serious injury.
What type of a collision was it?
Our preliminary investigation revealed that this traffic accident occurred as a result of illegal organized street racing. It's an increasing problem in our community that I'm not sure the public is aware about. And as you can see, it's a danger to both the drivers and other citizens involved.
Well, it's important that you secure the scene. You want to preserve all the evidence so you can document it later. Most police agencies will secure the scene actually farther away and give it distance, and then move the scene in, move your secured area in more towards the scene as you need it. But it's always better to use a larger scene, and you can always reduce the size of the scene as necessary for your investigation. Initially, you're probably going to be looking for, number one, you're going to be looking for some kind of indication that there's been an illegal speed race by start-finish lines, acceleration and braking skids. And if you have those present, you've probably got somewhat an indication that an illegal street race has occurred. You may inspect the vehicle and find that it has certain modifications to the motor. You may have gauges, modifications to the suspension and to the exhaust, which are pretty good indications that the individual driving this vehicle is involved in illegal organized street racing.
Interviewing witnesses at a street race or at a collision where you suspect a street race
can sometimes be a little tricky, and you have to be very careful in the way you approach it, because they're oftentimes reluctant to cooperate with the police because they were there and present during the race, maybe as a spectator, or it could be even as a participant. You may even be talking to the other driver if you only have a single vehicle from the race involved. And oftentimes they're reluctant to talk to you about it, so you have to be very careful in the way you approach it. But it's important for them to understand that the information they're providing is potentially going to be beneficial to the victims of that race or to their survivors. To make it easier on some of the younger officers or less experienced officers who may not have seen this type of a scene or an incident before, it's important for them to understand that their duty comes first, that they have to conduct the investigation and they have to be professional. But I think what's really important is once everything has calmed down and once you have the opportunity to walk them through the process, to sort of take a minute to debrief and talk about what they've experienced, what they've seen, and what they're feeling, and share your experiences if you're a little more experienced officer who's been through this a few times, and talk to them about how you handle things like that. And it's important to share your experiences and for them to have the opportunity to talk about it if they want to. Dealing with family members who may come upon the scene, or even sometimes we deal with them a day or two later during the follow-up investigations. But if they come up on the scene, that can be a really traumatic experience for those people. And you have to understand, the officers there at the scene have to understand that these people are going through a very traumatic time that most people don't experience in their life. So their reactions can be anywhere from extreme grief to extreme anger. We've seen cases where they will try to rush into the scene, and you don't need that. You definitely don't want that to happen. So it's important that at least one officer be assigned to deal with those folks, stay with them. If you have crisis intervention people available in your agency, I would strongly recommend having them at the scene to assist you with dealing with the grief. The media can be a very, very strong advocate for law enforcement. It's very important to have a good working relationship with your media for a number of reasons. One is to get the message out that what has occurred here is something that's really, really serious, and it's a problem that's plaguing not only the state of California, but the entire nation. There may also be times where you're looking for information. If you've got a second vehicle involved in the race that has left the scene, the media can be a great resource to get the word out as to what you're looking for. There are often times that you will get witnesses or informants that will call in and say, "Hey, I saw what happened on the news, and I know who the other guy is, and I want to give you some information."
I'm currently handling 2 cases involving street races that resulted in death, and in each case there was a passenger in the car. So the question comes up, what do you do with the passenger? Do you charge the passenger? And in California, we can charge them under the aiding and abetting theory if we can prove that they encouraged the conduct or instigated the conduct. And typically, we don't know what happens inside that car. The only people that know are those that are inside it. So it's very important for the police officers at the scene to take a careful statement from the passenger and find out what exactly they were doing. Anytime there's a street race and there's modifications of the car, it's very important that those modifications are documented, because jurors want to know that these are people who are serious about racing, not someone who just pulled up at a stoplight in their stock car and decided to race at the drop of a hat. The typical defenses we see in street racing cases involving death can run the gamut, anywhere from "I wasn't driving," "I wasn't racing," to "I didn't know that street racing was dangerous." So it's important for police officers at the scene to get accurate statements from the defendant that they were driving, that they were racing, and most importantly, if we're trying to consider filing a murder charge, find out what kind of knowledge they had about the dangers of street racing. Have they raced before? Have their friends talked about the dangers of street racing? Or have they heard on the news that people have been killed from street racing? Those statements are crucial to be able to prove the mental element in a murder charge for street racing. As a prosecutor, I've really seen the tragedy that results from street racing. I've had mothers of people who have been killed by street racing in my office crying their eyes out. I've gone to the hospital. I've seen a 17-year-old kid who had a bright future ahead of him laying there hooked up to life support. And it really, really is a tragedy. And when you see the actual results of these street racers, these kids who are being killed, and the mothers who are crying for their lost children, it really motivates you to do something about it.
My daughter was out on a first date with someone that she met through my job. It was just a single car collision. Unfortunately, we did lose both of them. She was a week shy of 18 years old, She had just graduated from high school 2 months prior to the crash. And like I said, she had no idea. She didn't even know illegal street racing was going on. I have to make sure that something positive comes out of her death. I can't just let it be in vain.
Our 30-year-old son was killed street racing. He and a friend were out racing in the middle of the night, and the car overturned and they were both killed instantly. And it was just surreal to drive up there, and it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was pitch black, except for the lights from the ambulances and everything. And as we pulled up, all I could see was an overturned car. I could tell there was still a body in the car, and there was a body laying on the ground in a body bag, and it was my son. And it's just, it's not something any parent should have to go through. It's just not. And you know, it's changed our lives forever.
When a police officer goes to a scene of a collision where somebody has died, regardless of who's at fault in that collision, it's the officer's responsibility to maintain his professionalism, his or her professionalism. And if they're going to be dealing with the surviving family members, they have to remember that those people are not the ones that caused the collision. Regardless of whether their loved one was or not, you have to deal with them the same way you would as if you were dealing with a member of your own family who had gone through this.
So when we found out about this program, my wife and I, we decided that this is the thing we need to promote, you know, and save other parents from going through what we went through, and hopefully keep some kids alive.
We found that a lot of the parents whose young children, whether they were street racers or not, who have died as a result of a street racing collision, want to do something positive towards helping solve that problem.
As long as there are bored kids and fast cars, there will be racing. To simply say no is not enough. A legal alternative such as a sanctioned drag strip will get kids off of the street so that they will not be a danger to themselves and others, and into a controlled environment where they can race safely.
You need to bring in legal alternatives. Well, I'm a strong believer, and we are a strong believer, that law enforcement can come out here with a bigger hammer. But this is a legitimate racing event that's occurring in an illegal environment. We need to be able to substantiate and allow for these folks to be able to take this sport and bring it to a legalized venue.
RaceLegal.com was born in 1998 as a direct result of all of the carnage that was happening within our community as a result of illegal street racing involved crashes. San Diego as a community simply said enough is enough back in 1998 and stood shoulder to shoulder and addressed this problem. It's taken a yeoman effort of law enforcement, Superior Court, probation, and this alternative of RaceLegal.com to finally make a difference. For example, in 2002, we had 16 youngsters who were killed here in San Diego and another 31 that were seriously injured. This year, in 2003, to date, that number is 3 dead and 2 seriously injured. So you can see we've had a tremendous impact. And that change of that magnitude is really unprecedented. It makes no sense to me to go out and approach this strictly from a law enforcement standpoint. Just as it makes no sense to go out and approach it strictly from an adjudication standpoint or strictly from a probation standpoint. I think the object is to put it all together in terms of this paradigm, the closing the loop piece. The numbers don't lie. When you go from, in 1998, 3,500 kids who are actively participating in this illegal activity on any given Friday or Saturday night, down to today in 2003, where you'd be hard-pressed to find a half a dozen cars in the whole county of San Diego out there illegal street racing, we must be doing something right. I think it's important to say no, but it's also important to provide a significantly safer and sanctioned alternative, which allows them to, to take care of that need for speed, but in a safe place.
So if you're trying to redirect a certain behavior, where are you redirecting them to? And then that's the need that we fulfill at RaceLegal.com.
That's my son laying under that body bag in the middle of the street with blood and gas and fuel everywhere. And you can see the other body still trapped in their car. It puts it in a different perspective. And that's why my husband and I are so passionate about this. You know, we start with the high school kids, and the high school kids can come out and run, and they're in a separate class, and then, we break it down from there into the different groups. Kids out here, when it's slow, these kids will make 15, 20 passes a night. And, they go out of here going, yeah, but it gets it out of their system. It gives them a chance to fulfill that need for speed that they've all got, and they're not doing it on the street.
Speed, adrenaline rush, pretty good. Like it here because you don't get a ticket here. That's the best part about it.
I really think the police need to really try and relate to them and understand and remember what it was like to be 16. Not let them off, no way. They need harsh punishments on it. But I think the cops have to develop a rapport with the kids.
By being involved within the community, you'll be reducing the amount of illegal street racing that occurs within your city limits. By building relationships with these young people, you'll not only be saving their lives, you'll be creating safer streets and reduce the amount of street racing related accidents and deaths that occur as a result of this illegal activity. We have a vehicle that was donated to the city that we take out to the schools. It looks similar to the kind of cars the kids drive. We challenge them to race us at the racetrack legally. We call it Beat the Heat, the only time you can race a cop and not get a speeding ticket. As a result of the kids participating, we give hats and t-shirts away, and it's another tool we use to bring the kids closer to law enforcement. So instead of looking at us as an authority figure, they look at us more as the competition. Because of budgets being what they are, a good tool to utilize is local businesses. And you'd be surprised the sponsorships that are available out there as far as support goes. Local tow companies have vehicles that have been impounded that could be utilized for this type of a program. And once you get into the schools with the kids and they see how the cops are trying to come at them at their level, the response that you'll get is just incredible. I've seen it personally.
Ignoring the problem isn't going to make it go away. And all you're doing is you're pushing it off on your beat partner or another agency to deal with the problem. So you have an obligation to go ahead and resolve this problem, go talk to these kids or young adults and educate them and let them know, hey, this is what's wrong with your vehicle, modifying your vehicle in this manner, racing on the street is illegal.
My advice to another agency that's starting to have problems would be to deal directly with it immediately. Go in with a zero tolerance. Look at some of the things that we've done as far as ordinances and legislation from the state as far as towing vehicles that are participating in it, the chain ordinance, the 30-day holds.
Man, I tell you what, you want to really put the kibosh on street racing, take their car away from them. Street racers love their cars. And when you take away their car, it's like taking away their girlfriend or something.
We have manufacturers that are promoting their high-performance parts for our vehicles. Street racing has been going on for many generations. And you give a man a car and he's going to make it faster. That's just one of those facts of life. And when these companies are promoting these high-performance parts to go fast, we need a place to use these. And providing drag strips in places that are safe alternatives to street racing is something that these manufacturers may want to think about providing for these youth and for us not so young people anymore. That's real important.
A couple of tactics that have been successfully used in San Diego that haven't been used elsewhere that truly should be utilized or are contemplated have to do with undercover surveillance. And one of the reasons why that's so important is you want to be able to instill a sense of paranoia. You want these folks to be able to police themselves when you're no longer there. You don't want to have to be there babysitting them all the time. And if they understand that once in a while the police are out there filming them and maybe not arresting them that day and arresting them at a later date, they'll be looking around the crowd on those days that you're not there going, I think that's a cop, we better not be racing. Another unique situation that we ended up using in San Diego is not arresting them the day that we ended up seeing the violation. We'll gather up information having to do with 5 or 6 or 7 different events. We'll gather up 20 names, put it into a arrest warrant package, take out the media, and make a media event 5 or 6 months later. And once again, that instills that sense of paranoia of going, they got them from 5 months ago, do they get me from last week? And all those tends to instill not only that sense of paranoia, but get them to self-police. During our block-ins, one of the things we do is we prepare a written document in which we offer the drivers and the occupants of all the vehicles what the laws are, where to stay away from, the reasons why it is that we're doing our enforcement. What we follow up on that's rather unique is we write down the license numbers of every single vehicle in the block-in, and we send the registered owner a similar letter. And oftentimes the registered owner is going to be mom or dad. That sends a light, and once again you get somebody else to assist you in your enforcement, and it is mom or dad. Although that, you know, the occupants of the vehicle may be 18 to 20 years of age, and I've heard that that's an issue in which you don't contact mom or dad. Mom or dad may be the insured that's on that vehicle, so once again they are responsible for what's going on. They will take an interest, and they'll take this problem off of your hands.
If you cover all the bases and you think, well, what would my defense be if I had just been caught doing this? Think of all the things you might use as a defense and make sure you've covered all your bases and that you've got that in your report. And that will be very beneficial to a successful prosecution.
We've found as we've had a recent accident involving a street racer, and when the parents in the community came out with their responses, it wasn't so much the street racers did this and the street racers did that, why are they street racing? The questions were sent to the law enforcement. Well, why haven't you done anything about this? Why haven't you enforced all these laws? The street racers are everywhere. You can see them. How come you're not doing anything about it? And really, we want to get proactive in our response and take care of the problem before it turns into a big accident, before people get hurt or die.
You know, if you save one life from stopping them from racing on that street, I mean, there's no price tag on that.
18 and invincible. We were all once there. But now cars are lightning fast and beer can thin, and the drivers are a lot younger and inexperienced in driving these death machines. The ever-growing subculture of street racers is an epidemic. However, it can be controlled through stricter laws, community education, and legal alternatives. As you know, there will always be a need for speed. However, through proper police tactics and persistence, we can take back the streets.
We just had another case that ended up with a 19-year-old female where she got 6 years of prison because she was involved in an impromptu street race. She was driving a Mustang against another Mustang, and she was doing, I think, 72 miles an hour at the time of the crash. And a vehicle that pulled out from a side street on a street that is a 40-mile-an-hour zone, and the whole thing there was sight distance. He looked, we're surmising because he died, that at 40 miles an hour he would have been able to see the vehicle coming down the road, but at 70 plus, his judgment was not good enough to distinguish whether he was going to be involved in it. He pulled out and the Mustang broadsided the van caught on fire, and 2 men died from the injuries not resulting from the crash, but the coroner said they both burned to death and were alive at the time. And she got 6 years prison time for that because she was racing.